Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am Oren McIntyre. Joining me today is someone who doesn't need a lot of introduction. He's written many books, is one of the preeminent philosophers out of Russia, Alexander Dugin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
Excellent. So I want to just begin by discussing the issue of multipolarity. This is something I think a lot of people are recognizing across the West, that liberals in the West, especially American liberals, had this idea of the end of history, that we had figured out how to order society properly, and we no longer needed to ask the larger questions of human meaning or organization. There was a standard way that we could pretty much align all societies, and it was only a question of when every country would realize the truth of liberalism and organize under these principles. What we're seeing now is that this is simply not working out, that the application of this ideology around the world just does not fit with many societies. And even in the societies where it originated, it seems to be eroding the understanding of peoples and their ways of life. So what is multipolarity, and why is this a solution to the issue of this kind of global liberalism that doesn't seem to fit every nation?
So first of all, you are totally right about this globalist project. That is one of the main feature of liberalism. Liberalism denies very explicitly any kind of possibility of difference. So there is only one way of the global development represented by the Western modernity, but liberals insist that the final shape of this Western modernity, it is given by them, by liberalism. So the liberalism, it is a kind of the result of the human history, the top of the development, of the progress, and the set of values proper to liberalism is not just one ideology among the other, but it is the only ideology. And liberalism has arrived to this position basing on the historical fight against the alternative ideologies, as well Western, as well modern, fascism and communism, and that is a kind of summary of the history. But liberalism from the very beginning insisted that there should not be the states, so there should not be alternative. There should be only one state, global world or government. There should be only one political philosophy based on the radical individualism and cutting all the ties with collective identity. That is the metaphysical individualism. There should not be the states, the churches, the nations, the ethnic groups, nothing of the sort, and all the individuals making transactions across the world without any identity. So liberals don't recognize any kind of identity outside of the individual one. So they deny existence of the people, of the churches, of the religious, ethnical groups, religions, and so on. All that is optional. Gender is well optional, and being human is as well optional. So the individual, it is metaphysical principle, not identic with human. Individual is something that could exist without humanity. For example, in dimension and AI, in the post-human species. So, and the gender politics, and it is just preparation for this final advancement of this individualistic liberal society. That is the concept of the end of the history. And multipolarity concept, multipolarity as a theory, it is a kind of total refuse of all the principles embedded in liberalism. Not only geopolitically, economically, cultural, cancel culture, unipolarity, globalism, anything. So the idea of multipolarity starts with affirmation that there is not only one civilization in the world, Western one, liberal one, progressive one. There are many, not so many, few, let's say few civilizations, including Eastern Orthodox, Russian, Chinese, Indian, Islamic, African, Latin American, closer or further from the Western one. But this civilization, they have all the rights to follow other paths, other way in the history, to create their own political, cultural, social, spiritual, philosophical systems basing on their traditional values. So the Western modernity and liberalism is just one of the options. It is not the destiny. It is not the end of the history. It's the claim to be the end of the history and the summary of the history of all humanity is something hegemonic, something imperialist, something colonial in its essence. And multipolarity, it is a radical rejection of this claim by the liberal globalist West. But this time, and that is different from Soviet time leftist alternative to liberalism, that multipolarity is not left. It is not just Marxist criticism of capital. That is affirmation of the dignity of the spiritual identities and principles of different civilizations. It is basing much more on the traditionalist approach. So if we are, as Russians, Christian Orthodox, so for example, the results of secularization of the Western Christianity is not obligation for us. It is just historical experience of the Western part of the humanity, and we are the we have other matrix. So there is no individualism, there is no nominalism, there is no capitalism. We could arrive to other conclusion in the history, as well as Indian and Chinese, as Muslims, and that is multipolarity. That is something new, because there is inertia, the will to reduce the multipolarity to something that existed before, for example, Westphalian system, the kind of national states or ideological camps. But in the reality, multipolarity is something postmodern, it's something new, totally new. It is a kind of anti-globalism from the right, basing on the acceptance of the deep and traditions and deep identities of different civilizations in the plural.
I think a lot of people who hear this critique often say, but liberalism didn't actually say that we have to end nations. I mean, you might see hints of it in places like Immanuel Kant or others, but John Locke probably understood that there would continue to be nation states. And so when they look at classical liberalism, they say this is the liberalism that allows for nations and peoples. It is the perversion, it is the progressive liberalism. This is the one that has gotten out of control. Do you think that that's a fair distinction, or do you think there was something at the heart of liberalism that would inevitably lead it to the place that you're describing?
So if we come to the principles of the liberalism, we see in them already the final station. So the Lockean liberalism, or old good American liberalism or European liberalism, they were just the stages, just the phases of the same process. So from the very beginning, liberalism was wrong in identifying the human nature as the individual. So that was the conceptual error. And when this conceptual error was in the center of the philosophical tradition, that started to pervert step by step all the social and cultural and political systems. So liberalism worked through the centuries, not being so horrible as today, but if we follow the development of this very principles of individualism, starting from Protestant Reformation, starting from anti-Catholic theology of the Reformation, we could identify this nominalist, individualistical approach already in the roots of the liberalism. But obviously, old liberalism it was not so radical because it was just a stage, just a phase, historical phase. In the first time, in the first era of all liberalism, the liberals could tolerate existence of national states. More than that, national states were created by bourgeois instead of traditional states, spiritual states, empire. The Pope's rule over traditional political order in pre-modern Europe. So liberals were in favor of creation of bourgeois national state as preparation for the civil society, for the future globalization. So that is a very important thing. For us, it is obvious, it's easy to accept. I think for many Westerners who are very sincere and who refuse this totally perverted system of globalism, of neoliberalism, of liberalism that you have now, extremists, terrorists, absolutely insane. It is difficult to accept that because American history started with some kind of religious for liberalism, and if we compare that, the beginning and the end, so there is still a huge gap between them. So there is a abyss between them. But if we take a step outside of the Western history, of the Western modernity, we could identify that with the eyes of Russian, Muslim, or India, on traditionalist, Chinese, Confucianist. We could see that the problem was within Western modernity already. So that was, and the evil was there. So just we have arrived at the final station, the terminal station. So now, but that was planned, and the tickets were about to get where we are now for centuries ago.
So Samuel Huntington and his battle with Francis Fukuyama, with the end of history and the clash of civilizations, is very much at the heart of your work. You're in the dialogue with these guys. And Huntington comes to the realization that after the ideological bifurcation of the global order, under communism and liberalism, that we were going to have these much more organic identities. We're going to return to a more traditional understanding of peoples, of language and religion and heritage, and many of the things that had made up identities previously. One of the things that he points out is that you're going to probably not see nation states be enough to push back against a more global order. Instead, he sees civilizational blocks where a core state more or less runs the zone, and then the other states that share in that civilization, he tends to define them by religion, they will be part of that civilizational block with that kind of one or two core states leading this. You have a similar recognition of the need for there to be larger identities than nations, but smaller than global understandings. You have the empire understanding, similar but not exactly the same. Now, I would wonder what you think are the differences between your and Huntington's solution, why yours is more robust, because I think to many people looking at the geopolitical goals that you might have, they're saying, okay, well, yes, some of this makes sense, but the practical application of this is basically the United States needs to roll back its empire and Russia needs to be allowed to expand and control its empire. And so just practically, this looks like someone who's selling a philosophy to me that is going to hurt my nation and help his nation. And so I was just wondering if you could speak to the differences between you and Huntington in this area, and if there is a true reason for why this needs to be organized, or if this is ultimately just in service of a geopolitical project.
So first of all, I think that Huntington was absolutely right. So he was prophetic. He was deeper than everybody believed during his life, because he has given the more correct description of the world and of the future. Everything we see starting from 2000, 9/11, from all this period, starting with 2000, that was absolute confirmation that Huntington was right and Fukuyama was totally wrong. Fukuyama himself, I have spoken several times with him, he recognized that. So his claim that there is only one humanity, only one state is over, that was too early. It was not timely. So, and he affirmed, Fukuyama, that in order to arrive to the end of history, we need more time, some maybe new phases to prepare this end of history. So he was in hurry too much. And Huntington has described a very correct and perfect picture of what will follow, what we will have in the near future and what we have already now. So Huntington is correct. So it is not just to position. Maybe Huntington was not against the globalism, but he just described the reality that globalization will fail. That globalization is based on the abstract principle that everybody in the world is already prepared. Every society in the world is ready to be to change the gender, to be transformed into modern Western liberal individuals. But that was not the reason. And I could judge on my own society, we weren't ready for that, absolutely. And when we have discovered what the modernization, globalism, and liberalism mean in reality, we have refused that. That was not just decision of Putin as individual. That was the common reaction against the Western liberal globalist project. When we have discovered what is its meaning, we have rejected that. The same with Chinese, the same with Indian, the same with Islam, as Muslim people, the same with African. But that is not just theory of clash of civilization. There is constatation of the bitter for the globalist reality of the status quo. The things are like that. So nobody except the West, and maybe the West itself, but outside is absolutely certain, nobody is ready to become the citizen of the world in the concept of liberal globalism. So globalism is rejected everywhere, and in the West as well. So, but for example, what we see now in this crisis of immigration, of illegal immigration, all this talks about grooming gangs of Pakistani in England, all this problem of immigration in American politics, we see that the society remembers, is recalling that there is something more than just individual. There are cultural collective identity, to be American, Native American or not, to be integrated culturally or not, to have some religious ties with the society or not. That is not about biology. It is not about the color of skin. That is about collective identity. It is much more important principle. And this collective identity could be national, ideological, or civilizational. So the second point that Huntington has pointed out very, very clearly, that the problem will be not between national states, because national states are more or less dissolved by now in the West, at least. So national states don't represent anymore the deep identity. Liberalism has destroyed this identity, but in spite of advancement of the totally individualistic civil society, global society, there appeared this new kind of deeper identity, civilizational one. So, and that is the fact you could not win with ideology, with propaganda, with some artificial means, because civilization is something deeper that is deep inside. And I think that the crisis that the West passed through now is about that. So the West discovers as well, the West, who is and was the main driver of this globalization, liberalism, globalism. Now it discovers something wrong inside itself. The West is discovering its own civilizational identity and finds that there is something wrong with that. So there is identity, there are the enemies of this deep identity, and these enemies are not external as Russia or China or Muslim country. There is internal globalist elites who still continue to implement this globalist agenda, this end of the history project, in spite of growing pressure from the bottom to recover, restitute this civilizational identity of the West. Concerning geopolitics, so I don't see any problem how we could unify, recombine this civilizational approach with geopolitics, because geopolitical boundaries, geopolitical borders coincide with the civilizational one. They are not just the borders, but frontiers. They are the zones between civilizations. So they correspond to the existence of the great empires in the past, before advent of the modernity. So that is not by the case. So civilization is much deeper and much stronger civilizational identity than just politics, national state, ideology. Civilization is common ground for different people living in different states, but sharing the same worldview by the culture, by the roots, by the identity. And that coincides with the shape of the empires. So we could call this new multipolar world as the global power, or global powers world order, or a civilizational world order, or the kind of return of the empires. So we see Chinese empire, Russian empire, Indian great states, Islamic empire, African continent as the project, the empire of the future, and two vice regency of Spanish empire, so Latin American empire, and Brazil was for some short time an independent Latin American empire as the possible image of the future. So we could call it empires, we could call it global powers, we could call it civilization. So it is not just justification of imperialism or expansion. It is about something much deeper, and the Ukrainian war, it is not just the war between West and Russian civilization. It is about the very principle of sovereignty and the freedom to impose to one of the civilizations its own rule in the zone of its responsibility, because it is not about to add Ukraine to some Western civilization state. It is idea in the Ukraine there is battle, the fight between globalists, between liberals, between those who are for the end of the history, and with those who defend multipolar vision. And that multipolarity could be applied not only to Russian Empire, to the West, to Western Europe, to America. And when we saw how MAGA started to grow in the United States, we had an impression that that is something like acceptance of multipolarity in reaffirmation of the American civilization is going on. So we interpreted, maybe it was we were wrong, I could not say, but we have seen in the MAGA movement, in Trumpism in general, precisely this return from the globalism to the idea not of the national state, not so much of a national state, but to the idea of American empire. And all these talks about Canada and Greenland were not just the jokes. We consider that as the plan, as American plan to create great space, to establish North American civilization as the pole of this multipolar world, maybe strongest, maybe leading pole, but just the pole among the other. So that how we read Trumpism and MAGA, maybe we were wrong, and that is the very interesting subject of discussion, I hope.
So one of the ideas that has come to fascinate me has been the development of peoples as a metaphysical entity. It's something that has a spiritual reality and a destiny that is its own. And I encountered this in other thinkers before running into your work, like Spangler, and later on read into Heidegger and others. And so this is an idea that I think is represented across many different thinkers and traditions at this point, and I think has a lot of truth to it. One of the things that you outline, I think pretty eloquently, and I think it's the fourth political theory, is the way in which when societies scale, they have to abstract their way of being into something that is more analytical so others can follow. You have to turn it into an ideology instead of a lived experience so that can be spread to other peoples who might not necessarily naturally encounter it or apply it in their own way. And so one of the things that I do think about when we're talking about these empire level civilizational geopolitical arrangements is you have a situation where you're necessarily going to have to artificially abstract some level of the way of being of the people in order to operate this state. And I think scale is one of the greatest enemies of human civilization right now. We have abstracted so much of what we do. We have created such a high level of complexity that we are no longer rooted on our natural ways of being. And I worry that the civilizational model, while I think it's better than global, still scales too high, that the imperial model is going to open itself repeatedly up to this problem. It's not that the liberal model is the first one to run into it. In fact, most civilizations, when they feel like they're at their height, tend to want to force their will onto their neighbors in the world. It seems like a natural cycle of civilizations and not something that is just particular to liberalism. So does the fall of liberalism actually solve this problem? And is empire actually the right place to stop this scaling? Because I'm not sure that that won't eventually still destroy the characters of individual peoples.
So first of all, the difference between national state and empire, that empire tolerates the differences, political, ethnic differences, and collective and identity inside. So national state is dealing only with individual citizen. So citizenship or nationality, it is the fact, juridic, legal fact to belong to this state with the idiom, the main language, and so on. That is formality, that is abstraction. Citizenship is abstraction. And when we are dealing with national state, we are absolutely dealing with these juridical abstractions. Empire deals with collective entities of different scales. So inside of empire could exist the kingdoms. Inside of empire could exist states or different kinds of tribes or religious communities. So empire, that is, in my opinion, it is the greatest possible scale that still has the relation to plurality. So if we come from the empire to the humanity, so that is precisely the problem. So if we, because empire, it is a kind of relative absolute. That is a kind of universality with the limits, inside of the limits, not outside of the limits. Empires, they always rescale. So they grow, they shrink, and that is natural process. So they try to save and to transmit its core, so the heartland. So the empires, they prevent, they defend their heart, but expansion or reduction of the territory is a sort of working heart in the organism. So it is expansion that is opposite process. So the process of rescaling is not abstract. It is put in the reality of the being, and the main power of empire is attraction. It is not so much expansion, but attraction, cultural attraction, metaphysical attraction. So empire should have mission, and that mission is the last argument to unite the people and different political and social and cultural entities, including religious entity, around this axis. So the empire has something Platonic inside of it. It is vertical organization or vertical around vertical axis. It is open from the top. So it is not just the will of some individual. So that is tyranny, and Plato hated that. So it is not empire. Empire is open and on the top. It serves some truth, some transcendental spiritual mission. So we could not imagine the British Empire was not such kind. That was just liberal expansionist colonial entity. But traditional Roman Empire, Greek Empire, Assyrian Empire, Russian Empire, Byzantine Empire, including Chinese Empire, so Indian civilizational as well, circle of influence. So all these traditional empires, Ottoman Empire as well, Abbasid Empire, they united many different political entities. So they preserved rather than destroyed the differences inside of them. And national state, it is totally opposite. So national state, it's something that reduces all kind of identity to the individual one, to the citizen. And that is preparation step to globalism, to civil society. When you destroy the organic cultural, spiritual entity by individuals, you maybe in the first time in the borders of the national state, after that they are ready to integrate in something more, as in the European Union. There was a nationalist stage of globalization. After that came this supranational mixture, confusion of the individuals, and but mixture between French and Germans was not enough, so they have brought the other individuals, individuals with no roots in European society, in order to destroy this deep identity. So liberalism, it is the conscious destruction of civilizational identity, and multipolarity is a kind of opposite strategy. And I think that as well, that is important, that abstraction, you have mentioned the word abstraction. I agree that sometimes abstraction is bad thing, but bad abstraction is bad. Good abstraction is good. So if we correctly can abstract the meaning, the spirit from the phenomenon we observe or the thing we are dealing with, that is good abstraction. The problem is not in abstraction or artificially creation. So when this abstraction is based on error, when artificial creation is counter-natural, So that is the problem. So we are obliged to deal with some abstractions, with some artificial steps. So we need to create something, restore something, preserve something, and always there is the choice of the free will. We Christian Orthodox, we believe in existence of free will. It is one of the main important point of our belief. That is difference with Calvinists. So we are absolutely certain that there is free will. So we could choose, we could make a wrong decision, we could repent, we could revise, criticize ourselves, but we are free to decide. And in globalist, modern globalist situation, you have no right to speak what you think. So you should say exactly what CNN or Soros Network or Starmer has said you to say. So there is totalitarianism, liberal totalitarianism, based on this mechanical understanding of the progress, of the individualism, and so on. So I think that empire, it is not about imperialism, not about expansion. It is about the principle. So the state with the mission, the state that accepts the differences inside and bases these differences on the principle of collective identity.
Yes, Spengler's prediction is far more fatalistic, as it tends to, have the civilizational phase, which ossifies these different ways of being into something that no longer has, is no longer animated by the spiritual. He saw that as kind of the end of a civilization rather than its ability to readjust, I suppose, in those moments. But one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, because you're one of the few people besides Nick Land that I've ever seen touch on the issue of accelerationism, which is very important to me because neo-reactionary theory is kind of how I got into this. And in Land, it's the it's the lack of the negative feedback in the circuit, the cybernetic feedback loop. For you, it's the monotonic process. But in either instance, it's the recognition that we seem to be heading through this postmodern moment into something else, and what we're going to end up with is going to be perhaps post-human in a way. Now, when I spoke to Nick Land about this, he said, comparing with kind of what he had seen of your work, that the difference is, while you were both recognizing a similar phenomenon, actually he interestingly brought it back to the ethnic difference. So he said, for him, being an Anglo, the end of the accelerationism was actually the jettisoning of the human, and created a different scenario where capital escapes that which is human and finds its own destiny in the stars, as where your version of this ends with humanity transcending the need to be bound by rationality and science and otherwise finding a way back to spirituality. Can you speak a little bit about those differences? Do you think they're grounded, as he points out, perhaps in an ethnic approach to the way that you see this issue?
Maybe so, but interesting. I have asked artificial intelligence, Grok, to write the article about comparison between my ideas and ideas of Nick Land. And interesting, the result was very, very satisfying. The artificial intelligence responded that there are some similarity and there are some differences. Similarity consists in the rejection of liberal globalist world vision. So radically in both cases. So in my case and in case of Nick Land, dark enlightenment, anarchis, and right accelerationism. So we use almost the same term in our criticism of liberalism. So we despise it, we hate it, we criticize that in all its different forms. So this radical rejection of status quo, of left liberal globalism, is common. But artificial intelligence, I continue, has said that there is a kind of difference. So myself criticize that from the pre-modern position, or considering postmodernity as the chance to return to eternal paradigm, not just to the past, but to eternity, because the God doesn't belong to past. The past, the God, it is eternity, and eternity is now. Eternity is not just the way of thinking in the pre-modern time. The eternity, if we believe in it, it is now. Christ is now. Church is now. The mystery church are functioning now. So, and I use, according to AI, the postmodern moment of general dissatisfaction of the contemporary state of things, of liberalism, as a kind of occasion to return to eternity. And Nick Land wants to do completely opposite move. So he tries to accelerate, he tries to get the modernity to its own logical end. So total destruction of the humanity and of the life itself. So his idea, and Reza Negarestani idea, they proceed from the objective-oriented ontology, speculative realism, that is idea to finish with the human and philosophy, and start to deal with the things, to something that is in the matter, or maybe on the other side of the matter, as kind of Lovecraftian entities, the old ones. So and weird realism of Graham Harman and the Mersou as well. They use this term of something that is on other side, grandiose, totally outside, as the personalities described by Lovecraft. So that is satanic parody on my understanding, metaphysical understanding of conservative revolution. So that maybe at the end of the day, the both versions are much more radically opposed than our criticism of liberalism. So we reject in liberalism totally different semantic cores. So but Nick Land, why I'm so interested in his work, because he does two things at the same time, very important for our intellectual strategy. First, he make very important, very deep and essential criticism of globalism and liberalism. That is as critical as in case of Marx, for example. He is new Marx. But at the same time, he serves as example of the clearly, openly satanic essence and nature of the progressism, of the technical development, of the speculative realism. So that is about Antichrist. So the concept of Nick Land and his fanged phenomenon in his book, very impressive. So he approves, at least it seems as if he approves that the end of humanity, the life, and the liberation of the core of the earth on its final travel to the sun. So that is a kind of satanic anti-Christian myths, but presented naked, presented openly, without any humanistic Wales on it. So, in both senses, that is interesting. He's much more responsible as thinker than the absolute majority of the globalists. They who don't dare to accept what they're doing in reality. They are killing the humanity, and Nick Land affirms very well, you are killing the humanity, you are going to destroy the life. Very well, say that what you're doing. That will be much more honest. And so let's say that. Don't hide. So let us destroy the life. Let us destroy the humanity. That's a good idea. That was planned in the initial stage of capitalism, and so on. So he is a bit of like punks, metaphysical punks. No future. There is no positive solution to the problem we are dealing with. But this despair is a kind of sincere. It is so we shouldn't. As Nietzsche, for example, Nietzsche has said the God is dead, but that was not Nietzsche who has killed him. That was all the rest around him who made it. So when Nick Land invited the people to kill themselves as soon as possible, so it is not his will. He a bit mocks on them. That is a kind of deep metaphysical bitterness and irony in his work, and I like that also. That we should have some special reading of Nick Land and Reza Negarestani. They are very prophetic in something. That is not the casual event that Peter Thiel is going to dedicate to 4 seminars in the September to Antichrist. So that is very in tune with Land thought. So let's start call the things by their correct names, and I think Nick Land does precisely that, and that is why I respect his writings, his ideas very much.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation. I mean, it's certainly a Faustian project. It's certainly a Nietzschean project. And I think that, you can disagree with his objectives deeply, but he is a very clear thinker. As you say, he's got the courage to follow these ideas to their conclusions. And when they're laid bare, then we can actually assess whether this is the place that we want to go. But on the subject of actually making decisions about where we want to go, one of the better illustrations in your work about this issue is the metaphysics of the washing machine, and how this technological revolution draws us and has a natural gradient on which we're going to approach. And the question is, can we protect our own humanity? Can we reject the washing machine? Is there an ability to reject technology and maintain what is human by not sacrificing it? Now, one of the things that Land points out in his version of accelerationism, which I think is unfortunately very true, is that accelerationism collapses decision space. The more that technology advances, the less time we have to react to it collectively, and it robs us of our ability and agency in those moments. And so I can see smaller individual communities, an Amish community or others, very tightly knit, very strict religious communities, perhaps rejecting the metaphysics of the washing machine. But I am doubtful that civilizations seem to be able to do this, because, as I said, the technology keeps accelerating the pace at which decisions must be made, and we have less and less time to deliberate on these issues, and things just happen automatically because we don't know how to approach the technological revolutions that are happening under us. In many ways, our politics feel like an attempt to blame other people for the consequences of our technological advancement, rather than actually tackling any issue as a civilization that we need to. So do you believe that ultimately we can, as civilizations, get a hold of the technological problem and arrest this acceleration, or is this ultimately something that will be taken out of our hands?
So first of all, I would like to to clarify a bit the concept of civilization, because you have mentioned Spengler. He used civilization in a very special way. So as the end phase of the culture, of the cycle of the culture, the cycle of life of the culture, I use that in a totally different way. I include in the concept of civilization, as French do and Italian do and American do, mostly without direct allusion on Spengler, as the cycle of culture. So in general, not just the final stage, technological stage of the development of the culture. So I'm using civilization, the word, the very word civilization in that sense. It's something global, inclusive, where there are different stages: rise, fall, and so on. Second point, very important, about technology. I think that technology, it is metaphysical problem. So that is why metaphysical of washing machine. So we need to consider and to conceive the techniques, the technology from the metaphysical point of view. What is technology, and why it is so important in our life, in our society, in our history? Heidegger has developed the great line, the context, how we need to think that, and according to him, technology is a kind of alienation of mind. So Heidegger is dealing with two very important core concepts: Dasein, being here, Dasein, and das Man. Das Man, we could not translate it. They say, they think, and who are those? They who say. Nobody. So they say. It is not collective affirmation. It is something abstract that is here, but you could not never be sure that somebody has really says that. So that is das Man in German language. They say, they think, they go, and so on. So das Man, it is the product of alienation of human mind, of human behavior, of human Dasein, of human presence. And this alienation is something technical. So das Man, this alienated form of being, of existing, is already artificial intelligence. So if we don't live authentically, if we question what is the being, what is ourselves, why we are thrown here in this world, if we don't put this question, if we don't confront the death and nothing directly as a kind of, if we don't lead the dialogue with them, we are totally immersed in the routine, in the banal life, everyday life. So we are working, thinking, living as automates like das Man. So we are not human. We are already, before being replaced by artificial intelligence, robots and cybers, we are already replaced authentic form of being by non-authentic form of being. We are already we are already the robots, the artificial intelligence, because what is going in our minds, that is the kind of continuation of CNN, of globalist propaganda. They say, they think, they oblige us to do that by the law, by their rules, by their words. So we are working as if we are the parts of the computer, and in that sense, being leading this inauthentic, non-authentic life, we could not change anything. We are algorithms already, not after. We are already inside of this artificial intelligence. That is the other brilliant idea of Nicolas that we are living in a simulation and not in the reality. So in the level we are leading in authentic life, we are already in the future. So we could not make any decision. And the technique, it is about that. Technology, classical mechanic is about that you could not choose. So you are obliged, you are put in some predestination as in Calvin system, but Calvinism embedded in the mission and the politics and the society and the technology and the industry and the economy, all that is mechanical predestination. And being that and agreeing with such a definition to be human as they impose on us we should be, so following their orders, so be accepting being the process in their matrix, we have no choice. And that is, if it is so, we agree that design is lost. Design lost, and design is the possibility to choose, precisely to choose. And that when there is design, there is always possibility to choose differently. So choose technique or not technique. And when there is no design, they say you should follow the techniques. So nothing could be done. So if we and that is about our fight against globalists. They say that everything is already decided. Everything, that is the progress, the laws of social development, there is woke day, there is cancel culture, there is progressive value, and we have only one thing, we have to follow that. We could do nothing. We could be obstacle to that, all obstacle as patriarchat, as males, as whites, and as Christians, and not too much gay friendly. So it is there is the choice to be in tune with time or to be retarded. So nothing else. There is no choice, because that is the technological approach to the society. But if we believe in design, if we stand strong defending design and possibility authentical being, so we always could change the destination of this process. So because that is the illusion of technology, the illusion of inevitability of linear progress. We always should agree. So without this existential agreement from ourselves, nothing could happen, absolutely nothing. But that is the mystery of God and the heart of believer. And if we believe, so we know our strength. So nothing will happen if we don't accept that. And that is why our revolt could be successful and we could win this destination, this fate, this destiny as techniques. Because if we can save design, but to kill design, it is the main task of object-oriented ontology, by the way.
So it seems like you have hope that ultimately we will free the human from this artificial algorithm that's already taken over. I often tell people you're already an LLM and you just don't recognize it, and that throws people for a loop sometimes. But I think it's increasingly clear, as you point out, that people are already operating as algorithms without understanding it, and the return to living authentically, the Dasein, would be overcoming that. But at the same time, even though you seem to have hope for that outcome, you also talk about a post-human politics in which instead of a man sending a text message, the text message sends the man. The partisan goes out and commits crime because technology tells him to, becomes a political actor or terrorist because technology instructs him to. You also explore something that is a little opaque, I think, for most people, but an angelology, an idea that there are larger metaphysical forces that will be driving human action. And so, a way it seems like you're simultaneously saying we need to return to this higher level of human agency and living authentically, but also technology and perhaps the metaphysical realm might be moving in ways that would have us, in a post-human direction when it comes to how politics will play out.
So, but when I described what could arrive, that doesn't mean that I agree with that. So interesting that there's the talks about bots and algorithm now is put on the political level. Recently, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has said that the growing anti-Jewish, anti-Israel moods in United States are totally artificial. So there is nothing behind that except the bots, except the algorithm. So now, when I described some years ago that finally there will come the moment when the bots will participate in political debate, now it is the fact. So it is not just my wish that it arrives, but it just a kind of analysis. So post-humanism is already here, where we are losing our design. We are in the post-humanist reality also, and the difference between our behavior of bot is almost nothing. So we behave exactly, they behave exactly like us, we behave exactly like them. So posthumanism is already here. The real humanity, it is the restoration of vertical dimension in our soul and direct contact with higher worlds, with God, with angels, hence angelology. So the beginning of the desacralization of the West was not in the moment when they had lost the faith in God, but when they lost the faith in angels. Angels are very important. They have very important mission in the religion, because God is too high. He is transcendent being, but angels are in between. And when you mock at them, when you say, oh, we could recognize the existence of God, but angels, they're pure superstitions. So you hit the theology and most important point. You could the axis is broken, axis that unites you and God, because it passed by the messengers. So the figure of angel was so central for Rilke and for Heidegger as well. So the angel, it is not God, it is something much more modest, but much more higher than ourselves. So that is thinking entity, but on the contrary, we are immersed in bodies, and angels are free to think. So they are perfect people, perfect men. They could only think, and that they could dedicate their life for the thinking, and that is why they live eternally, from the beginning to the end of the world. But they could make as well decision, and some of them, we know, the part of angels, they have decided in the wrong way and started to destroy the reality. And I have all the feelings that this terminal station to which Western modern liberal globalist civilization approaches, it is something like devil, like a fallen angel who is hiding behind the matter, behind the end of history, behind of progress, behind of object-oriented ontology, behind the end of history. That something like that Thiel has said in his very interesting, intriguing interview recently. So my idea is that that ideology is a very important part of living religion. So if we abandon it, we abandon the bridge between us and God, and that is precisely desacralization. And so our relations to God is destroyed, is perverted, is but when this bridge is destroyed, there is the end of humanity. With the end of angel, there is the end of human. So when we say angels are dead, so that means we are already in the post-humanity, because the angel is the relation between man and God, and when we lose these relations, so we are done. So there is something post-human that arrives, and there is no difference anymore between bots, algorithm, and ourselves. We could not prove that, because the proof to be man is relation to God, to the other, to the people, to the society. Relation, not just being present or following some algorithm in life, in society, some behavior. So being present as relation. So this relation, that is the meaning of what is the person, and why person is different from individual. Person is the relation. Individual is something that is under mask, and a person is mask in the Greek sense. So mask means relation. So that is very important thing, that post-humanity, it is not about technical development, much more than that. So technical development is the sign of deshumanization of ourselves. So we are losing our relations to the transcendence, to the higher world. And we think naively that no more verticality, only horizontality is around us. That's wrong, because if we don't get up, we get down. So if we don't ascend to the heaven, we are descending to the hell. So, and hell approaches, and that are not metaphors. So that is something much more than just images. There are some presence of the evil we feel more and more, and I think that many of the people who now become more and more awakened, they feel that. Maybe they could not explain it, but they feel that something is going wrong with the modern civilization. We blame each other, we blame immigrants, we blame Russian, Americans, Muslims, Chinese, everybody. But we feel that something is global. It's better to the most correct blame, in my opinion, it is to blame Soros, to blame globalists, to blame liberals. But they are not ultimate evil. There is something that is hiding behind them. It is difficult to accept the presence, the existence of some things, because modernity mocks at that, mocks at angels, at demons, at Satan, but they should be there, and they are. And their presence is more and more felt by people, I think.
Yeah, I think it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to deny that, and they're willing to say it more openly, even as they're mocked, because we're simply too close to it. It's too real to deny, no matter what you've been shamed into. I wanted to ask you one more question, and I should mention for the audience, this is pre-taped because of the time difference, so we won't be able to take audience questions today. Sorry about that. But before we leave, I have to ask, you reading the fourth political theory, multiple times in the book, you discuss the need to, basically make war on the West. That you seem to even have a framing of an apocalyptic end, an eschatological end of the West, and these kind of things. This is very alarming language for a lot of people. I think that they're rightly encountering this. Many people are saying, Alexander Dugin is trying to destroy me and my family. He wants to destroy my civilization. He's trying to bring about the end of the world. He's embracing the symbol of chaos. This is a man who is, hates America, hates the West, and is looking to destroy it in some kind of, fiery apocalypse. Again, I understand in the context of the book that may not be the case, but the language is rather incendiary and it brings people to these conclusions. So could you clarify why that language is in the book and what you mean by that ultimately?
So if we consider the history, we see that the modernity has appeared in the West. So I'm sorry to say that, but that is a kind of choice made by Western civilization in the beginning of the modernity to take the wrong path that has led precisely to the point we are now. So that was the Western error, Western failure. But and what is important that is decision not of myself as a Russian. That is the conclusion of French and Italian, two most important for myself authors, French and Italian, by René Guénon and Julius Evola. And I have taken that from them, from Western philosophers who have identified the main problem and the end of the world and the Antichrist in the Western modernity. So Guénon was French, and he has said that modernity is Kali Yuga, is the end of time, and that is total perversion. And West is responsible for that, and East is not responsible for that because East was colonized by the West. So Western modernity is the satanic kingdom that was based on the destruction of holiness, of the sacred values, of the church, of the Christianity, of the Greco-Roman tradition, of the Platonism, of the Aristotle. All the contrary was praised. The progressism, the materialism, the atheism, the social democracy, and liberalism, and so on. So, and that was the fault of the West and modernity, and not of the rest. And that is the same position was that of Julius Evola. He was in the favor of the traditional Western values. He defended the traditional sacred values, but he criticized radically the Western modernity. So I'm following
and Christianity. He didn't like Christianity at all.
Yes, he didn't like Christianity because he considered that the path of modernity, of the Western modernity. I don't agree with him, but logic, I try to clarify the logic. So if modernity, it is Western phenomenon, and today modernity is represented by globalism, by big pharma, by Fauci, by Democrats, by globalists, by liberals. So it is not just some situational moments. It is the logical arrival of the conclusion of what had started with the beginning of the modernity, following Guénon and Evola. But at the same time, I would like to say that I very much like, and I would say I love the Western tradition. I am admirer and reader of Western philosophy, of scholastic author. I adore and admire Plato and Aristotle, and I deplore profoundly that the West has lost itself, its soul, its soul. So for me, the criticism of the West, it is not just the position of Russia, it is position of the Western traditionalist as well. So I feel total solidarity with all the Westerners who try to return their spiritual tradition. They try to find and reaffirm the roots of their spiritual and sacred identity, but the modernity, Western modernity, is something openly opposite. to sacredness, that was based on profanity, that was based from the beginning on the destruction of the transcendental dimension. And I could not accept that. Neither in Soviet Union I was radical opposition to communism. I was dissident. I was anti-communism precisely because communism was Western and modern, because it was based on atheism, on materialism, on the Western values and not Eastern traditional Orthodox values. So I'm trying to defend tradition in the East, in Russia, in China, in Islamic world, in India, and as well in the West. And that is why I feel the deep solidarity with all those in the West who try to bring back the real profound traditional value, who fight against the globalism, the liberalism, and modernity. And I think they try to split us, to say, oh, that's Russian, they're imperialists, they try to kill you. They say the same for us. Oh, these Westerners, they try to impose their rule. But for sure, we have no desire and not capacity to do that. But globalist West, not some imaginary or some abstract West, but the West we are dealing with now, could do that and is doing that precisely. The West, modern West, attacks us, and we are on defensive position. But if you are under attack, you should resist. You should fight back. But it is not the war against the West as such, but it is the war, our war against the liberalism, globalism, and Western modernity, I would say, represented geopolitically in unipolarity, in hegemony. And why we observe that there is the inner resistance in the West. We feel solidarity with that. So our attitude to West is not linear. So we are against globalist West, but we have nothing against the great Western sacred tradition. And if we could help in something, we would very much like that to do. And that is nothing nationalist in this refuse of the West. That is metaphysical. So we identify as traditionalists, as Christian, as Orthodoxes. We identify in modern Western modernity the kingdom of Antichrist. And if there is the resistance to this kingdom of Antichrist, we are willing to support them because they are our brethren and sisters. And if we see messengers of Antichrist, we resist against them. So when the people from Soros, Open Society, or from EU, they come to us to teach us, to fight with us, we resist. And without hatred, you could not fight back. But when there are Western traditionalists, they come to us or we come to them. I see no problem with them. So I could easily explain what is our position. I support their absolutely just will to make your society, Western society, great again, because they are not great now. They are in powder. They are totally destroyed. They are not great, and that is very important. When I hear again, great again, I like that, because now America is not great. It is humiliated. Is the hell, and not the prospering Christian Anglo-Saxon traditional society. Is the hell. You need to do something with that. So again, it is important to make it again great. We have nothing against this greatness, restored greatness, but we have everything against present state of things and this globalist rule of this occupational government of the whole West, who now it is clear they are following their own path. They have no relations to the people they represent. They sacrifice you. They use you. They despise you. You are protesting against migrants. They bring them more and more. You resist against mutilation of children during gender operation, but they insist to do that in lower classes, make this absolutely crazy humiliating propaganda of the scene. So I think the real enemy are not us, Russians. The real enemy are the Western globalist liberal elites. And they, in our eyes, they are the most concrete image of the West. So we call them West because they come from the West. They try to represent West. They say we are the West. But I know, and that maybe not many people in Russia, I know that there is something else in the West. I believe in this alternative West who is inside of this morbid and sick civilization. And I strongly believe in the capacity of the return to the authentic design of the Western culture, of Western people. And that's, in that sense, I think I am the great friend of the Western civilization if we include in the term West the sacredness, the Greco-Romans, Plato, Aristotle, and first of all Christian roots. In that sense, we are on the one and the same side.
So you've written so many books, and many of them are interlocking with each other. But if someone has listened to this and they want to understand more about what you believe and your thought, what would be the first book you would suggest that they start with?
Oh, you know, I'm calling the philosophy the castle of kingdom where there is no doors. So you could there is no some logical line. So if you just take any book, if you are interested, you could enlarge your experience. I have written the book on geopolitics, on the sociology, on the ethnology, anthropology, political philosophy. I have written 24 volumes on each civilization. So I have covered all existing civilization with some volume, and starting to write every new volume, I made some announcement that now from this first page to the last page, I will try to be the man of this civilization. I will not judge this civilization as a man of Russian civilization. I put that outside. I will return to my identity when the last page of the book will be written. But I try to be transformed, to change in this civilization. That is a very important anthropological method. But in main cases, it is applied to small society, to study small archaic tribe, savages, and so on. And I have applied the same method to the big civilization, and I think that is very, very interesting experience. But these books are not translated in English. Maybe some introduction to that is called Noomachia. Some introduction is translated and published, but you could start with anything it happened to be with you, because I think they have the same core. They are, my books are the paths who leads to the center, to the core, and there is no work that is a core, because all these paths are living. So you're following them, you could arrive to one conclusion to others. So it is some invitation to think. It is not just the final results of the thoughts. What I want, what I desire, it is to awaken the capacity of the authentic thought, and it is. And I don't consider my works as personal, individual works. They are something different. So that is an invitation to think authentically. And if you disagree with myself, if you criticize me, if you abandon me, that is not important. So if you try to start, maybe you will find something I didn't think ever there is theirs, because many people talk to me that they have discovered something in this page, in this book, that I didn't have in mind. That is very important. That is provocation of the original and very special kind of feeling outside of the coding. It is kind of many paths, as many books, as so many paths and so many ways to get out of matrix. So I think you could start wherever you want.
Excellent. All right. Well, people can explore your work then at their leisure, at their own interest, and begin at whatever volume they would like. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been a fascinating conversation. And of course, guys, if it's your first time on the YouTube channel, please make sure that you subscribe, click like, the bell, notifications, all that stuff, so you know when we go live. And if you want to keep these broadcasts as podcasts, you need to subscribe to the Ora McIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. Sorry, again, this isn't live, so we won't be able to do audience questions. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you next time.